Hey everyone, welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're doing something that is genuinely going to shift how you look at things. We're diving deep into Surah 44 of the Quran, Ad-Dukhan. But here's the twist. Instead of reading this as just, a collection of historical myths or super rigid traditions, what if we looked at it as a masterclass in human psychology, a really profound study of conscious awareness? Let's figure this out together.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think about all those fiery, world-ending, apocalyptic signs we're so used to seeing in Hollywood movies, or honestly, what we usually associate with ancient texts. What if they aren't about physical, end-of-the-world events in some distant future at all? What if they're actually diagnosing the anxiety, the intense confusion, and the ego that we battle every single day? That is exactly the paradigm shift we're exploring right now. We are moving away from cosmic, external events and right into deeply internal human experiences.
Section 1. Decoding in Ancient Text, the Methodology.
So, our foundational methodology for this explainer is called tasrif. Think of tasrif as contextual self-referencing. Basically, we're letting the text explain its own vocabulary by looking at how specific words are used across different parts of the exact same book. We're literally stripping away centuries of accumulated institutional frameworks and external historical narratives. By isolating just the Arabic text and observing its own internal patterns, we uncover these highly consistent, universal principles about human behavior. It's pretty amazing.
And applying this creates a massive paradigm shift. You see, the traditional interpretation usually gets bogged down in physical rituals, predicting end times cosmic events, and recounting biographies of ancient communities. But when we use tasrif, we get this incredible textual and psychological interpretation. Suddenly, the focus shifts entirely to internal psychological development, ethical accountability, and our exact states of conscious awareness. We're moving from a really rigid view of history to a deeply relatable, urgently modern psychological journey.
Section 2. Clarity versus the smoke. The core dichotomy.
Right at the start, the text declares itself al-Kitab al-Mubin, which translates to the clear book. If we dig into the Arabic root, KTB, it reveals a pretty bold claim. The text is stating that it's entirely manifest and self-evident. It's a completed, unified, and objective criterion of truth. It doesn't need a bunch of external sources to prop it up, It cuts straight through human ignorance. It represents absolute, undeniable clarity.
But then, in stark contrast to that absolute clarity, we have Dukhan, the smoke. Now, traditionally, people read smoke and instantly picture some apocalyptic sci-fi event in the sky. But psychologically speaking, Dukhan is the visible condition of a distorted mind. It's like that intense psychological brain fog of doubt and illusion. When we start treating life frivolously, or when we detach from reality and moral boundaries, our internal perception just completely clouds over. We literally cannot see clearly. We end up totally enveloped in the smoke of our own confusion.
Section 3. The Psychology of Denial. Choosing the smoke.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept of juhud is that it's an active, deliberate refusal to accept what you already internally recognize as true. It's a massive psychological defense mechanism. The text is actually telling us that people don't reject reality because they lack evidence or because they're just innocently confused. No, they reject it because of juhud. It's a willful choice of orientation. They're deliberately choosing to stay in the smoke because, reality is simply too demanding to accept.
And we know for a fact they aren't lacking evidence because of ayat, the signs. These ayat are absolutely everywhere. You find them in textual verses, out in cosmic nature, in historical events, and even in our own deeply internal experiences. These signs surround us constantly, testifying to reality. So when someone engages in juhud, they aren't just missing the signs, they are actively ignoring the objective reality that's staring them right in the face. They're purposefully closing their eyes to the universe around them.
Section 4. The Archetype of Ego. Pharaoh as a mirror.
The text gives us this clear warning. Do not exalt yourselves against Allah. So the crucial point is that Pharaoh isn't just some historical villain in an ancient storybook. Within this psychological framework, Pharaoh is actually a timeless mirror for our own human arrogance. He is the absolute archetype of the ego.
The text sets up a fascinating contrast here. On one side, you have Talu, which is seeking artificial height and dominance. On the other side is Sujud, which is simply yielding to objective reality. The pharaonic ego, that extreme arrogance, demands absolute independent sovereignty. It completely detaches from higher, natural, and moral laws. But here's the catch. Because the ego demands an artificial superiority over a fixed reality, it creates a completely unsustainable internal state. The ego literally cannot uphold itself against the laws of the universe. It always leads to an inevitable shattering collapse. It's the ultimate failure of refusing to just yield to what is real.
Section 5. Heaven and Hell Within. The Natural Consequences.
So the direct antidote to that huge ego and to the smoke itself is taqwa. Now, this is often poorly translated as just fear, but if you look at the root, taqwa actually means an actively maintained protective consciousness. It is the mindful protection of your inner orientation. By staying conscious of reality, you align yourself with the truth, and that natural alignment produces this amazing state of deep trust, generosity, and psychological openness. It's not fear. It's the active, daily maintenance of your mental clarity.
And this brilliantly illustrates the natural outcomes of our choices. Take the tree of Zaqqum, which the text describes as boiling, murky oil in the bellies. This isn't some physical tree in a distant geographical hell. It perfectly represents the toxic internal friction, the suffocating anxiety, and the psychological torment of a mind that is totally out of alignment with truth. But then contrast that with Maqam Amin, a secure position. This is a present state of deep, unshakable internal peace and absolute psychological stability. Heaven and hell in the Surah aren't far-off places. They are profound, present internal states that result directly from whether we choose the clarity or choose the smoke.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question. Are you living in clarity, attuned to the reality around you? Or are you actively choosing the smoke, trapped in your own psychological fog? The choice between the agonizing friction of the ego and the secure peace of awareness is entirely yours to make, every single day. Think about that for a bit. Thanks so much for exploring this with me, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.